right, so let's break down this first track a little bit. So this one's a slower swing. Bum, 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 bum. Gives us a 3 feel, okay? And this one's in G. So this one's dealing with G7 and C7 and D7. So when I go to solo over this is an absolutely typical kind of blues progression, 12-bar blues. So what would I do over this? Okay, well, I've got my major pentatonic, I've got my minor pentatonic, I've got my combination of those, the hybrid thing we talked about, my blues note. I'm going to use all of those things in this absolutely typical kind of blues progression. So what I'm thinking about is for instance, when the G7 is being played, right? I'm thinking about trying to emphasize that major third from the minor major twist that we talked about. I've got my root that I'm definitely going to emphasize. I've got my 7th. Those are different things that I want to emphasize. And then I've got my palette of, I can call them licks or whatever we want to call them, but they're really just kind of the way I move as I play. Always thinking about dynamics. Play more, then play less. Play higher, play lower. Play loud, play soft. Play a lot, play a little. Don't play at all. All of these different kinds of things, the dynamic contrast that we've been talking about, they come into play right here, right now. Okay? So when the 4 chord comes up D, okay, then I've of course got my note D that I could emphasize, or excuse me, G to C to D. So I'm on C. Okay, so I've got my C, but if you remember my discussion in the rhythm section about shell voicings, right? I'm very much at this point trying to emphasize the 7th and the major third. So those are things I would do, I could do those over the 1 as well, but they're going to be really effective over that 4 chord, over that C chord, because they're outlining the most important notes of that chord. You see? So 1 chord's being played, so I'm consciously thinking about the bump, 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 bump. I've got that kind of rhythm. Because I've got dun, 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 ducka, 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 dun, dun, dun. So I can always make licks that use that ba da 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 da. And again, contrasting, right? The rhythms and things like that. So over the 1 chord, I'm thinking about the root, I'm thinking about the major third. And I'm going to use all those other things, but notice how a lot of the other notes that I'm playing are more in passing to get me to the root, or to get me to that major third, or to get me to the 7th. Right? And then here comes that 4 chord. So then I'm going to try and target something that has to do with the C chord, whether it's the root, whether it's the 7th, whether it's the 3rd, which could be played in either space, either one of those places. And I love to do this bend on the 2nd string because, again, it works perfect over the root, because when I bend this up, it's becoming the root of the 1 chord. So that's just a great thing to do over the 1 in whatever key you find yourself in. See, what I try and do a lot of in my playing is not just playing up and down, unless I'm trying to make something more, rhythmic kind of thing. I try and play like to the outsides, like I learned how to do this a long time ago, where you kind of play. You play different kinds of things like that. So I might do some sort of lick where I play 2 to the outside, different things like that, and I'll combine that with other licks. Like I might go, You're going to notice I do a lot of sliding to the blues note. See how cool all that stuff sounds? Okay. Now we've got lots of different examples of backing tracks here that I'm going to be showing you. This is just one of them. But this is absolutely, in my opinion, one of the most typical kinds of things you're going to find. Now your blues might be a little bit faster. It might be a little bit slower, but it's this idea. So 4 chord comes along. I'm trying to target that. 5 chord comes along. Now again, 5 chord. Sitting right there. I've got these notes. Right? Just like I did on the 4 chord. 2 frets higher for the 5 chord. But then I might also outline the chord itself. Like, again, back in the rhythm section, if you remember we were talking about, like, I've got that sharp 9 that I might try and target that note, or I might play some sort of a, because again, I'm visualizing this chord, so I'm kind of outlining the notes I'm playing of that chord. And then there comes the 4 chord, and then here comes the 1. Okay? So I'm going to play a little bit more of this backing track, and I'm just going to try and give you some of my thoughts. I'm going to play nice and slow and try and yell over the backing track as best I can here. So here's just the intro to get me going. Just do some cool stuff. Here's my 5, here comes my 1. Filling space, here comes the 4. Back to the 1. Maybe a cool rhythmic lift. To the 5. To the 4. To 1. See, so I'm always aware of those as they're being played, and I'm responding to them. So this is a perfect example of, again, a backing track that could use some melody relative to the blues. Again, it's not an overly like minor melodic thing, but I'm targeting things on each one of the 1, 4, 5, which is why it's essential for me to know the 12-bar blues, so I can respond to these. If I didn't know the 12-bar blues, I don't know when the 1's coming or the 4's coming or the 5's coming. I can't anticipate anything. Okay, so I'm using these combinations of notes, whether it be the hybrid scale or adding the, again, however you look at it, the major 6th or the 9th or whatever it is. I'm adding those in sparingly, but they're used to get me, it's more of a vehicle to get me from point A to point B. It's not just playing a bunch of notes, because again, if you do that, it just sounds like you don't really know what you're doing, and it just sounds more like you're just playing a scale. So this is a great one for you to jam over. So what we're going to do right now is that we're going to jam together, and then you've got the backing track available. So I'm going to play a little bit, and then I'm going to leave some space for you to play a little bit, okay? So we're just going to go back and forth and do some jamming. You jam, and when you hear me start playing, you just kind of back out. And then when I'm done playing, you come on back in, and we'll just keep going back and forth, okay? So here we go. I'll start it off. Turn. All right, here I come. You go ahead. Going. All right, I'll take the first part this time. take the tag here. What I want you to think about a little bit is how that music sometimes will motivate you, or our interaction will kind of change the dynamic, and you'll all of a sudden be playing a little bit louder, a little bit faster than you were before, because you're trying to respond to what you're hearing and how you're feeling. And it's okay if you don't hit all the right notes, right? I mean, that's part of this creative space that I keep talking about, is you're trying to develop all of these things. So you're taking little bits of all of this stuff that we've been talking about, the ones that make the most sense to you, and you're moving them over here and trying to use those, right? If you find yourself trying to jam together, if we're jamming this thing, and all of a sudden you're trying to remember how the scale shape goes, or you're trying to develop a lick while we're supposed to be jamming, you're not in the creative space. You're over here in the fundamental space. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's the case and you really want whatever that is, shut off the backing track or the jam or whatever it is you're doing and just develop that thing and then bring it back over here. Because that's one of the big mistakes that people make, is that they try and jam, and when they start doing it, their mind starts going back to this fundamental rudimentary space. And then they lose the creativity. The dynamics are gone. They're not thinking about notes anymore. They're not trying to make a musical connection. They're just focusing on, well, how does that shape go again? You know, and they're going. And all of a sudden, they're not even making music anymore. That's what I want you to avoid. Okay, so this is a great one. This one I've called Slow Swing Blues in G. And I want you to practice this. This is kind of the staple of all the backing tracks that we do. This is the one that really defines the blues, I think, the most.